Zhenya Bakirova presents a series of discussions about the place of Kazakh culture in the global world. Meetings with prominent public figures, candid conversations, collisions of opinions, and discussions about the most important things.
Hello, dear friends. I'm very proud of our guest today, the legendary Nurlan Smagulov. Nurlan Smagulov has such a versatile personality. He's a successful businessman who feels very deeply about painting and sculpture. I certainly wanted to talk to him and learn about his volunteer projects in the field of art. I thought that it would be a good idea if among his numerous interviews devoted exclusively to business and politics, there would be at least one focus on cultural issues and the role of art in his life. Hello, Nurlan.
Hello, Jania. Thank you for having me. I am all yours.
You know, I specifically choose my guests among the people who are not associated with the world of art, because for me it's important to form a broader understanding of culture and to study how different strata of society relate to cultural processes, how they perceive art, if you want. In our country, you've long been known as a great connoisseur of fine arts. You own an exhibition gallery, and you certainly have lots of things to tell us about your perception of fine art, about art in general, about your initiatives and future plans. And these are some incredible plans, and I really want our viewers to hear about them too.
Thank you, Jania. I'm really passionate about collecting fine arts, especially Kazakhstani, from different periods. But the Soviet period of the Kazakh fine arts is especially dear to my heart. Although in our family collection there are works by both impressionists and young artists of Kazakhstan, the basis of our collection is made up of the Soviet Kazakhstan paintings, 1960s, I would say.
Why 1960s?
The artists of the 60s were very strong and they were very open. You remember? It was the Khrushchev thaw, Robert Rождественский, Yevgeny Yevtushenko. It was the time of freedom when people were getting out of prisons, they were freeing themselves from Stalinism, and it was the time when a lot of art trends were appearing. And if we talk about our Kazakh art, the 1960s was its most interesting period. The artists were very productive. I met with the artists of the 60s later when they were older and even asked them to repeat something from that period. They said it was impossible.
Oh, I see.
The freedom was literally in the air, the hopes and dreams those artists had. They were inspiring them, and it cannot be repeated. And this was not only true for the visual arts, this was also true for the cinema. Shakyen Aymana, for instance, it was true for the music and theater. I consider this period to be the heyday of the arts in our country.
I think this has a lot to do with your personality.
Well, I was born in the 60s, and I must say that this period
is close.
Has always been interesting. Of course, I do not remember it. There is no way I could possibly have. But everything connected with the year 1965 is dear to my heart. I know what kind of films were made back then, what books were written, what the culture was like. One of my favorite films, Angel in a Hat, was filmed around that time in the late 60s. And this all is very touching. Even the Almaty Hotel, which is part of our holding, we take good care of it. We have great respect for the preservation of its appearance, as well as for the values it represents.
You know, we Kazakhstani people, we all possess this unique feature. We don't concentrate much on ourselves because we are nomads. We are transmitters of different cultural phenomena. We always easily acquire and adapt to foreign things, and we do this with pleasure. And in the 90s, many people immediately turned to the outer world, to Russia, to the West, and still, you have remained focused on the things that are intrinsic to our nation. How would you explain that? You do things differently.
In general, I'm a very active entrepreneur myself. In the 90s, I started to understand my strong sides, my professional inclinations, but since I had no talent for writing, drawing, or for poetry,
What about music?
no talent for music either. I have pitch problems.
You're a very honest person.
When a person has no talents, he begins to compensate for his inferiority complex by collecting art objects. At first, I was no connoisseur of arts at all. I remember that in our Soviet flat, same like in many other flats, we did not have a single object of art.
Many can relate.
I was very naive about this all. I didn't know anything, but then I met my future friends with whom I now have been friends for many years. Edward Kazaryan, Alma Minlibayeva, Askar Izdauletov, Andrei Noda, and so on. They introduced me to art. They introduced me very delicately without imposing their opinions on me. Then my interest began to grow. I went to the workshops of older artists, and I remember that I was deriving great pleasure not only from collecting, but also from communicating with those artists. I found out that these are people of a completely different nature. They are romantic, they think about the eternal, and that was something I was missing in my business life, which was quite tense, hectic, tough even. And whenever I would talk to these artists on weekends, after work, they would come to my house and it would be completely a different atmosphere. And I was extremely fascinated by this, and for almost 30 years now I have been in the process of collecting art objects and communicating with artists. And I'm very glad that part of our collection, along with part of the collection of the Kazakhstan Museum, was exhibited in London and Moscow.
I heard about it.
We exhibited the National Museum of then Astana in the Kazakhstan Museum, and people were really interested. And for me, it was the first step that made me think, what is the purpose of me collecting all those works? What motivates me? And as I'd mentioned before the interview, we are going to build a museum of contemporary art, where there will be a hall with my collection, and the other halls will be those thematic exhibitions for young artists. There will be many exhibitions from Moscow, St. Petersburg, and from Europe. Of course. To be honest, I am inspired by the glory of
Philanthropists?
No, by the glory of the cities that became famous for their museums, cities like Bilbao in Spain, where they opened the Guggenheim Museum. Today, Bilbao is the global center of modern arts, and more than 5 million tourists visit it annually. They come to Bilbao, the city that was deteriorating before the museum was opened there.
It was on the brink of death?
And the museum in Bilbao, I mean, its building, it is the object of art. By the way, I've recently visited the Abu Dhabi Louvre for the first time. They named it Louvre Abu Dhabi because they have a 30-year contract with the French Louvre, and for those 30 years, paintings from the main Louvre will be exhibited in Abu Dhabi. For these purposes, a luxurious building was constructed, and today this building is a place of pilgrimage for tourists. Indeed, before they used to go shopping in Abu Dhabi, and now they visit the Louvre. There are a lot of such examples in Moscow. For example, Garage is also a very beautiful gallery. It is also the organization that does a lot of educational work at the same time. In general, a fine art museum is not only the place where art objects are collected and exhibited, it is, above all, the place where people of art are concentrated, where some musical and cultural events can take place, where there will be restaurants, large social squares, dry fountains, sculptures, the place where children can skate. So all in all, this is the place of urbanized spiritual communication for people, the place for cultural pastime. I think there is a lack of such facilities in Almaty.
Absolutely.
Over the 3 decades of independence, we've built a lot. We've built shopping centers, car dealerships. Against all odds, we have launched objects of business. But we thought very little about the spiritual. It's time to change. There is this spot at the crossroads of Al-Farabi Avenue and Nazarbayev Street, where a theater is currently being built.
Ballet theater.
Right there is the land that we will rent, the place where we want to build our museum, myself and my family. This Museum of Fine Arts will not be a commercial enterprise. It will not make money. It will be the place of patronage, a place where we will support art, where we will plan to host all kinds of events. As a result, this museum, after some time, will be donated to the city of Almaty. My collection, which will be the basis of this museum, will also be donated to our city.
To our city. So if we talk about contemporary art and your commitment to it, you know, in my field, the field of music, works of contemporary composers are a bit controversial. Their works are considered to be the works that appeal for a narrow segment of listeners. So, honestly, as a pianist, I would rather play Tchaikovsky and Chopin than some modern composer. Of course, their works are not so difficult. They're definitely easier to play than classical music because they're modern. And they can certainly be interesting to play, but it's just that we don't have this habit, this established tradition of listening to modern instrumental music.
We don't have.
And here you are, introducing something new. You turn our country into a really modern one because the Museum of Contemporary Art is some kind of a benchmark for the country in its development.
But, Jania,
So how do people perceive contemporary art in Kazakhstan, in your opinion?
you see, Jania, I want to be honest. Here is my truth. I sometimes find it hard to understand contemporary art. Moreover, sometimes I fail to distinguish a good thing from a parody. And whenever I attend a biennial or something, I look very carefully at these performances, installations, and video art.
But do you like
I
it?
like most of them, but some things I just don't understand, and I am always too embarrassed to admit this to myself or the people around me. And sometimes I just make this understanding face because contemporary art is very diverse, very advanced, and I simply don't understand everything. And the reason we want to build these halls for contemporary art, it is because as an entrepreneur, as a businessman, I see it as my responsibility to do this not for myself, but for the sake of other people.
Yes.
Not for the generation that has already been exposed to certain classical works, but for the young people. To me, it is very important that the young generation keeps up with the times. I want our city of Almaty to look attractive, and I definitely don't want our city to look one-sided. Because whenever you visit Kasteyev's museum, you would find works of Shardyenov, Aytbayev there.
Classics.
And if I have paintings of the same authors exhibited, people would say, well, what's the use of opening a new museum? It is supposed to compete with Kasteyev's museum. So I believe that we have to take a step into the future, and even if the founder himself does not fully understand everything about this art, he should rely on some kind of intuition when promoting this new museum. This is exactly what happened in Russia. Just before the October Revolution, Russian philanthropists would buy paintings of the Impressionists, who were not very popular in their homeland in France. So they would bring paintings of Cézanne and Gauguin, artists who were incomprehensible to contemporaries, and they did it hoping that they will eventually understand contemporary art and that it will develop. And this is our motivation too.
I'll now maybe interrupt your excitement about the upcoming plans a little, because there's something I want to address here. It's actually hard to imagine, but here we are sitting in this room and I see this modest, although quite impressive panel by Léger.
Yes.
When I read about it, I couldn't believe my eyes. How did Nurlan Smagulov manage to bring it here? Please, tell us.
Well, this panel that we have here,
Woman with a parrot.
in our mall, in a restaurant, it was purchased at Christie's auction. It is quite expensive, and for me, this was the most expensive purchase in my collection.
Who did you fight for it?
I competed with an Arab sheikh. As far as I heard, the sheikh wanted to buy this work in order to place it near some pool in one of his villas. And we wanted to bring Léger's work of this magnitude to the country. This was something completely different. And I am a very adventurous person, both in business and in my personal life, so I fought for it. And when I bought it and brought it here, I could not find a proper space for it, so now it is located here.
But it's not ideal.
Of course not.
I really like it.
It's the work that one needs to study closer. It emanates this warmth, you know. There is another similar work by Léger. It is now in St. Paul, and it is a bit smaller and more colorful. As you see, this work is executed in 3 colors. I'm very glad that for now I found a place for it here. But of course, its place is in the museum that we will build soon.
Museum.
I have more than a dozen works of Léger in my collection, tapestries, ceramics, and drawings. I'm very much fond of this artist. He was very close to the Soviet Union. His spouse was Russian. He was friends with the Minister of Culture of the Soviet Union, and he gifted him a lot of his works. I have his tapestry in my office at home, and his oil paintings, you can see them in the Pushkin Museum. In my collection, I have Léger ceramics, similar to those that are exhibited in Moscow in the Pushkin Museum, and they are extraordinary. I remember I was a student, I was 17 when I first visited,
and it clicked.
and when I saw Léger's works for the first time, I couldn't even dream of bringing his works to Kazakhstan. This is what the fulfillment of dreams is, because money and business, they come and go. They don't fill your life with a purpose, and they certainly won't perpetuate your name. While these things, they're things of real value.
You know, it just occurred to me, the things you're saying about your exhibits. It looks like you bought them first and only then decided to build a museum.
Yes, you're right, because as of now, I have more than 1,000 works of art in my possession. They all are stored in different places and storages. But you know, as a collector, I don't just want to own those things. I want my contemporaries to see them. There's a lot of art in our shopping centers, but I think we need a special building, a special atmosphere.
Nurlan, you've been hand in hand with fine art for many years, even decades. You're a collector, a patron. So how does the choice of the paintings affect the state of your soul? Do you feel some deep strings of it trembling when you choose the works for your collection?
Well, my first works I chose under the strong influence of artists, and I began to understand what was good and what wasn't, and now there's this feeling when I can choose and own something.
Without consulting anyone.
It strongly motivates me. When you buy an art object, you instantly feel a sense of ownership. You bought it, you're the owner of some intangible wealth, the owner of something really significant. You know, I did not come across my exhibits by chance. I brought them from Israel, from Moscow, from different cities, from America, from London. I was gathering Kazakh art objects not just around Kazakhstan, I was looking for things that were exported in the 90s. For instance, I bought the works of Pavel Zaltzman in the Golan Heights.
Did you outbid someone?
No, this wasn't the case. It was his daughter, Zusmanovich, who took away some of his works, and she did it several times. The work of Sidorkin, for instance, I bought in London, and the work of Salihitin Aitbayev, one of the most important works I own, I bought at Christie's auction, fought for it with the British collectors. The history of my collection is unique because I have been assembling it for years, one piece at a time.
What other things do you feel?
When you bring a new piece of art to the country, you feel pride above all, because you did it, because you think that this work will remain in your country. I never had the desire to export exhibits or sell them. I've not sold a single work of art in my life because I always experience this sense of joy when I think about the times this work will be preserved in Kazakhstan for descendants.
Nurlan, our program is approaching its end, so my last question would be, what is Nurlan Smagulov's recipe for happiness?
This is a very complex question, but I think that...
But I don't ask for the recipe for success.
Yeah, I see. Well, happiness, it is a good question because I have things prepared when it comes to talking about success. But I have nothing prepared about happiness. Because I'm very often asked about the success things at meetings, and for happiness, I think that a man has to be honest, decent and clean, in the sense that he must do good. He must be very positive. He must think about the world around him. These are the things that fill you with light and power. If you have flaws, if you want to make quick money, if you want to deceive someone, or if greed prevails in you, then you cannot be absolutely happy. I have a lot of happy friends around me. They charge me with their energy. They may not be very rich, not at all, but they are really happy and self-sufficient, and they live in harmony with their heads, with their hearts, with the world around them, and they charge me with their positive energy. I'm lucky to have such friends, and because of them, I can call myself a 100% happy person too.
What you've just said, just at the end of the program, this was amazing. I thank you for your participation, and I wish you every success in your quest for the recipes for happiness, the happiness you spread around, making everyone, including yourself, happy.
Thank you.
Thank you indeed.
I'm really grateful that you invited me here to this interview, Jania.
I dragged you in.
You were really persistent, and I believe this was the first time I talked about my hobbies for so long.
Yes.
This was the first time I spoke about my dream to build the art museum in Almaty. The things I said to you, they kind of reinforced my commitment. I truly got motivated, and I have enjoyed our conversation so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your interesting, intelligent, and deep questions.
And I know for sure that whatever you say, it will come into fruition in no time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.